Hello students, today we will learn about the fourth chapter of the Social Science Class 6 textbook of new NCERT, and the chapter's name is Timeline and the Sources of History. So students, this is the basic introductory chapter to history, or history's first chapter. Now let us start the chapter with the quote by E.H. Carr, as you can see over here. So the quote goes like this: history is an unending dialogue between the present and the past. So it's like a continuation from the present and the past. So, and what's more, the dialogue is between the society of today and the society of yesterday, right? So this means that we can understand the present only in the light of the past. So in a way, this quote by E.H. Carr greatly shows you the importance of history. Today we live in the year 2024, and if we really want to understand what is happening, why something is happening, what is the way of happening, what is happening today, then we have to understand what has happened in our past with all of us, with our forefathers, right? So basically, with this very important quote by E.H. Carr, now just look at this National Museum here in New Delhi. Now you see, such museums preserve objects from the past. You must have visited museums. Students, if you have not, do go there with your teachers or your elders at home, and then you will get a feeling of how much rich our culture and tradition is. When you look at the objects from the past in the museum, such as statues, coins, ornaments, paintings, and all of which will help you understand our rich cultural diversity, okay, of India. You will be able to understand our history, how we have evolved into today's humans. Okay, so now with this, let us discuss the big questions which will be answered in this chapter. So the questions are: how do we measure historical time? Next, how can various sources help us understand history? Come on, everybody has a limited life. I mean humans, right? At most 80 to 100 years. And if you want to know history, someone will not be there to tell you about their own history. So there will be some sources, maybe some written stuff, some old works or something like that. We will learn about it. And the third important question is: how did early humans live? What was their way of living? Was it very different from us? So the way that we are living today, has it evolved from the way of the early humans? So these are some of the natural questions that you will be able to understand and probably answer yourself as we continue with our course of this chapter. Okay, so how do we learn about the past? That means our history, right? So what is history? You see, the definition is mentioned over here. History is the study of the human past. Okay, now you have to just think about it. What is the earliest memory that you can recollect? Going somewhere, holding your hand with your mother and father, going to a mela, or eating something, or maybe you got scolded. That was the earliest memory. It does depend on you. So write it in the comment box. Now, do you remember how old you were at the time? Maybe 3 to 4 years or so? Probably before that you don't even remember. Now those memories today together are a part of your past, your own past. Okay, so I am talking about you and your past right now. And you see, your past you remember from up to 3 years or so. And today, what we are going to discuss is the past of our all humans. Past of all humans. See, so there is a relation. This is your past and the past of all humans, and this will be very, very vast. And how do you think understanding the past will help us understand the present? You just try to think about how to answer this question, and we will answer this in the due course of this chapter. Okay, so you will discover in science that the earth has a very, very long history, of which we humans occupy only a tiny part, the most recent one. Okay, so this is figure 4.1, the very first figure, and it is a very important one, students. Here you can see a timeline. Okay, so the timeline from this is our present, right, at the time of the writing. Okay, and you see this is how time goes back, like a knob. It is going back, and the various events you can see over here, and these are some of the most important stages, okay, which has been mentioned in the evolution of life on earth. See, for example, the earth, you see, it's 4.54 billion years. This color corresponds to billion. So the earth basically formed around 4.54 years. Now, how do you know it's 4.54 and not 5.44 or not 1.44? What do you think, students? Well, this will be answered in your science class, maybe in 6th grade or in high grade. But do write it down and you will be learning about it. These numbers, how do we know these numbers? Okay, you will be learning this, but it is important to at least understand the importance of numbers. Okay, now you see the first cell came around this time or so. So this is, you see, 1 billion, this mark, this is the 2 billion mark, this is the 3 billion mark, this one is the 4 billion mark, this one is the 5 billion mark, right? So the first cells appeared around 4 billion years ago. Next, our atmospheric oxygen, it appeared around 2.33 billion years ago. Now importantly, you see, the cells which appeared, it came before our atmospheric oxygen. Okay, you will learn about these concepts more in biology. Next, bacteria evolution, you see, it evolved around 1 billion years ago. And then we have sponges and fungi, which are the invertebrates. So invertebrate evolution, again you will learn about this in your biology chapter. Now, so this one was billion years, and now we are talking about the million years, right? Okay, so let's see. Fine. So and then the corals around 700 million years ago, they developed. Then you see the vertebrates start developing. The first was invertebrate evolution, and then the vertebrate evolution, and so the fish vertebrates. Then you see sharks, and our great competitors, reptiles, dinosaurs. Had dinosaurs been living, probably we humans would have begun extinct, maybe. Okay, then more recent, the evolution of birds and mammals. So one thing you do notice, that first the more simpler form of life, it came into existence, and from there, through the process of evolution, more and more complex beings started to give birth. Okay, so mammals around 100 to 200, between 100 to 200 million years. Then flowers and bees. Okay, and you see primates, humans, they evolved so many years ago. How many? You see, 10,000 years ago. Then fire was, you see here, developed around 100 1000 years ago. Then Homo sapiens came into existence. Okay, and so these are the importance of timeline of the few important stages in the evolution of life on earth. You might be getting questions in the examination, so this chart, write down in your copy and memorize this, because this will be important not just for GK but for general science and social science information. Okay, this will be very important. You will learn about the connections of the different evolutions later on in your higher classes. So this is probably the first time that you are getting such a wide idea together of all the evolution numbers, basically when which an organism has evolved or so. So keep this in mind. You will be learning more about this in your higher classes. Okay, so now with this, let's move forward. You see, many people study the history of the earth. You do know that, right? See this picture over here. Many people study the history of the earth, and some of them are trained to uncover the secret. See this person, look at the way he is looking at the rock itself. Okay, he is a geologist. And see the person over here who is writing down some observations. He is a paleontologist. Okay, who are they? We will be learning soon. Again, see this woman, she is taking some notes. Anthropologist. Then we have archaeologists. They are the four very important detectives. So basically, these four, you can say, are the great detectives who uncover our history. They help us understand our history. These four very important detectives. Okay, so you see, what's a geologist? This person. So basically, geologists study the physical features of the earth. Look, he is studying the stone over here, like the soil, stones, hills, mountains, rivers, seas, oceans, and other such parts of the earth. This is important, students. So geologists, they study the physical features of the earth, right? Next, paleontologist, this person over here. So what does he study? They study the remains of plants, animals, and humans from million years ago in the form of fossils. Now what are fossils? You see over here, fossils are impressions of footprints or parts of plants and animals that are found preserved within layers of soil or rocks. Now, talking about fossils, let's spend few more minutes on it. So basically, fossils are unpreserved plants and animals whose bodies are buried in sediments such as sand and mud under ancient seas, lakes and rivers. Now, fossils also include any preserved trace of life that is typically more than 10,000 years ago. Say for example, here you can see ferns and leaves in compressed form between rocks. Okay, next, what do you see over here? Fossil of a dinosaur. Okay, so you see soft body parts decay soon after that, but the hard parts such as bones, shells and teeth, they can be replaced by minerals that harden the rock. Now in some very exceptional cases, the soft parts like the feathers, plant forms and other evidences of life such as footprints or even dung, potty, may also be preserved. Now remains can include microscopically small fossils such as single-celled, pollen grains as well, or more familiar fossils such as ammonites and trilobites. Here are some more examples of fossils, you see. Okay, now next we have the anthropologists, and they study human societies and cultures from the oldest times to the present. See the person over here, the woman, she is talking to people, so in a way she is trying to understand that culture there. Okay, fine. And finally, we have the fourth detective, the archaeologist. So remember, students, here you are learning about the four important scientists and detectives. Detectives and scientists who help us understand the history. Okay, and what do archaeologists do? They study the past by digging up remains that people, plants, and animals left behind, such as tools, pots, beads, figurines, toys, bones, and teeth of animals. I have shown you some of the remains of animals, even plants, ferns, right? Parts of houses or bricks, among others. Now, let's move forward. You see, how is time measured in history? Each society and culture had its own ways of measuring time. Major events such as the birth of an important person, say Jesus Christ, say for example, or the start of a ruler's reign, say Alexander, may often mark the beginning of a new era. At present, the Gregorian calendar is commonly used worldwide. So what's the Gregorian calendar? This is yet another very important concept, students. This calendar that we now use the world all over, it has 12 months adding up to 365 days and a leap year every 4 years. However, century years, for example 1800, 1900, 2000 are leap years only if they are multiples of 400. So in the three centenary years above, only 2000 is a leap year. So this can again be asked in the form of a question, student. So this Gregorian calendar is also important. Okay. Now, so as I was saying, Gregorian calendar is commonly used worldwide, and side by side Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Chinese and other calendars are also used for calculating the dates of festivals and other auspicious important events. Now in the West, the conventional year for the Jesus Christ birth has generally been taken to be the starting point for this calendar. Years are counted forward from this point and used to be marked with AD, an abbreviation for a Latin phrase that refers to the years after Jesus' birth. However, this is now called the Common Era or CE across the world. This is an important concept. For example, 1947, the year India gained independence, can be written as 1947 AD, sometimes AD 1947 or 1947 CE. So here you see three different ways of writing the timeline. Okay, three ways. Next, similarly, the years before the conventional date for the birth of Jesus are counted backward and used to be marked with BC, that is before Christ. Nowadays, they are called before Common Era, BCE. For example, 560 BCE is an approximate year of birth of Gautam Buddha. Okay. See for example, this picture. This shows you timeline of some important events since 300,000 before Common Era. For example, see here 40,000 before Common Era. First examples of rock art was found in the world, and Ice Age is around between this 40,000 and 14,000 before Common Era. So here in this diagram you get to know about two important events. Okay, so students, mark this. Okay, so students, here you can see we are over here, the timeline of 2000 Common Era plus. So right now this is 2024 Common Era, right? And here time is slowly going backward. So this is the birth of Jesus over here. So just like the integer concept, somewhat similar but not entirely, just like the integer concept, we have the plus, just a second, this is known as Common Era, and in the back direction we have the before Common Era. However, there is a catch, students. See over here. You see, such calculations are simple, but there is a catch. In the Gregorian calendar, there is no 0 year. This is important. So, this example of Common Era before Common Era is not entirely, not entirely like the integer where we have the 0 concept. So there is some similarity, but that ends here. Okay, fine, let's continue. So you see, the year 1 CE, 1 Common Era, follows immediately the year 1 BCE. So this means in the timeline here, if we have 1 BCE, then just after that we have 1 CE, and important, there is no 0 in this timeline. So this is the timeline. Okay, follows immediately the year 1 BCE. You see, I have drawn you marking every year. Okay, because of the absence of the year 0, say for example, if I mark the time between 2 before Common Era to 2 Common Era. Okay, so let me write down the times in between. So here we have 1 Common Era, and here we have 1 before Common Era, right? So how much time has evolved between 2 BCE and 2 CE? So how much time? 1, 2, 3. See, only 3 years. This is what is mentioned over here, and not 4 years. Okay, why? Because of the absence of the 0. There is no 0 present. So to calculate the number of years between BCE date and the CE date, we should add them but subtract 1. So in the above case, we have to find the time between 2 BCE to CE, you just add the numbers 2 plus 2 minus 1. See, for example. Okay, now say for example, regarding Buddha, suppose we are now in the year 2024, then Buddha was born in which year? You see, yes, I mentioned that the approximate year of birth of Gautam Buddha is 560 before Common Era, right? Then this means that Buddha was born 560 plus now 2024 minus 1, and that is 2583 years ago. Student, this is important. This can come in the exam as an important question, not just Buddha's question. You might be asked a similar question. Okay, let me ask you a very basic question. Let's start. Suppose an important event happened in history, say 10,000 years ago. Okay, now the question is, you have to convert this 10,000 years into BCE. So how will you do? Just follow this pattern. So you write 10,000 is equal to, so that BCE year, let it be X, then we add 2024 to it and then subtract -1. So this is our 10,000. So this means that X is equal, so X plus 2023 after this operation is equal to your 10,000, right? So this means your X is equal to 10,000 minus 2023, which is how much? And the answer is 7977. Okay, so BCE, so the event which happened 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, basically it transforms to this 7977 BCE. Okay students, so this is how we do this conversion question. Okay, now let us come back to this timeline showing the important times. So this is Asoka around 200 before BCE, then birth of the Buddha around 560 BCE, right? 560 BCE. Ashoka we talked about in the last class. Then this is the Saraswati, in the Saraswati civilization, which was previously known as Harappa civilization. Okay, then this is before your 2000 BCE. Next, the world's first cities in Mesopotamia, it formed around 5000 BCE. The beginning of copper metallurgy is before 4000 BCE. So how many facts are you getting? So many facts. You see the pottery technology in Indian subcontinent around 6000 BCE. First settlements and the beginning of agriculture 8000 BCE. You will learn about this somewhat in this chapter. And the end of the last ice age 12,000 BCE. So how many information have you recollected from this timeline? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so 9 very important information you can get from this timeline, and this can be asked as an MCQ in your examination. Okay, now again timeline. We have already learned about this, but let us a little bit more talk about it. So you see, a timeline is a very convenient tool to mark such events, as it shows a sequence of dates and events covering any particular period. So this is the definition of timeline, students. Now the timeline runs from the beginning of humanity to the present with a few important landmarks. Note that the dotted portion, see over here, this is the timeline. So right now we are over here, right? 2000 common era, so we are around here. Also 2024 common era, and this is our future, question mark, we don't know. Now, so as I was saying, the timeline runs from the beginning of humanity. From here timeline is running, right? So the timeline is running like this. Time has unidirectional flow. Okay, now note that the dotted portion marked a skipped period. Otherwise this timeline would have to be almost 3 meters long. Okay, well, we can't see that dotted portion, but basically it means that there are line breaks almost everywhere here, so that we don't see, otherwise it will be very, very long and many more events will be here. Basically the timeline shows you the birth of Buddha, the birth of Jesus Christ, over here in this timeline. And another very important concept about timeline is that it helps in understanding the order in which events, historical events, have taken place. For example, even without looking at dates, you can see that the birth of Buddha occurs before that of Jesus, right? See over here in the past. So Jesus' birth of Buddha has happened in this direction. So it has happened before that of Buddha. Okay, now some important quick facts. Along with a year and a decade, that is, what's a decade? Decade is a period of 10 years. We often use other terms to understand longer durations of time. Two of these quite commonly used when learning about history are century, that is, it is any period of 100 years. Any period of 100 years. In history, you see, specific centuries are counted every 100 years, starting from the year 1C. For instance, we are currently in the 21st century CE, which runs from 2001 to 2100. Okay, so 2001 to 2100, this is 21st century. So what will be the 22nd century? 22nd century, students, 22nd century will be 2101 to 2200. Okay, next, what will we say 37th century? This is an important question, students, might be asked in the exam. So see 37, you do write this. So in this part you just write 3700 and then go backward. So this means how much? 3601. Okay, so this is how you do this. Okay, the centuries BCE are calculated beginning from the year 1 BCE and keep going back in time. For example, so we have talked about CE, now BCE century. So two types of century, CE century and BCE century, right? For example, the 3rd century BCE would include the year 300 BCE to 201 BCE. Again, let me write it down. So 201 BCE to 300 BCE. This period is known as your 3rd century BCE, right? Now question, suppose I ask you students, what is the 8th century BCE? So similar to the previous case, you just write, see 3rd century 300, so 8th century it will be 800 BCE. And now here we went back 300 before, so 100 less than 300 was 200, right? So here also it will be how much? 701 BCE to 800 BCE will be your 8th century BCE. So this was an important question. Next, let us consider the concept of millennium. Millennium is any period of 1000 years. In history, specific centuries are counted every 1000 years from the year 1C. So similar to the previous case of century, millenniums are also mentioned. Say for example, we are currently in the 3rd millennium CE, which began in 2001 CE and it will go up to 3000 CE. Okay, so let me write it down. 2001 CE to 3000 CE. This is your third millennium CE, right? Next question, when will the seventh millennium happen? Seventh millennium CE happen. So just like this example, seventh millennium means 7000 CE, subtract 1000, so it will be 6001 CE. Okay students, nice. Next, in the timeline you mark the beginning of 8th millennium BCE. Millenniums are plural is millennia, millenniums or millennia, both are correct. Just a second students, probably I have, yes, this is not what I have mentioned over here. Basically I have told you the concept of millennium in CE over here. See, 2001 CE to 3000 CE, so this concept. Similarly to CE we will have BCE. Okay, so for millenniums as well. So as with centuries, the millennium BCE are also calculated beginning from 1 BCE and they go backward. So the first millennium BCE, so let me write it down. First millennium BCE, what was the timeline? It includes the time say 1000 BCE to 1 BCE. Okay, this was your first millennium BCE. Now what about the 8th millennium BCE? Let us write it down, which is a question. So 8th millennium BCE. So this means that we start with here 8000 BCE and then subtract 1000 from it or so, and we get 7001 BCE. Okay students, so this is how you do. So see this figure, where is the period over here? See, so it will be over here. If this is your 7000, then this will be your 8th millennium BCE. Okay. Now, another very important quick fact is that calendars have been traditionally made in India. You do know that students. You see, many Indian calendars rely on the positions of the sun and the moon to define the months of the year. You see, a Panchang, you might have heard this, is a book of tables which lists the days of each month along with related astronomical data. For instance, it precisely predicts events like solar and lunar eclipses, times of sunrise and sunset. Now, Panchangs are still used today. In many households you will find it. It's widely used. And often also they give us weather predictions for the year, dates and timings of festivals. Even people use Panchangs to set dates for auspicious events like marriages as well. As an example, you can see here the Thakur Prasad Panchang for the year 2024. Okay, see, this is how a Panchang looks like for the January 2024. This is the dates and these are the important events, timeline, Vrat, Teuhar, Jayanti. Everything is mentioned over here. Okay students, I will cover the sources of history and other parts in the later video.